In this segment, we're going to talk about cures. We're going to talk about and discuss the products that we cure, the reasons that we cure, and some of the common products that we use to cure. So let's start off with why we cure. Now, we had to sustain life. We had to make sure that we got through the winter months after harvesting in the fall. So, dating back to some of the Germanic tribes in history, they introduced food products to salt. Salt is hygroscopic. It absorbs moisture and it retains it. Removing the moisture out of the product helps to cure the product and to make it more shelf stable, therefore reducing the risk of microbial hazard. This process dates back to early China, and some of the products that they used to cure were vegetables and meats, seafood, and sometimes even their noodles to make them a little more shelf stable. Today we'll talk about curing pork products. We'll discuss a little bit about brines. We'll also talk about some of the other products that we use for curing. Salt, like I said before, is the most common product for cures. We can use regular kosher salt, we can use sea salt, which has natural nitrates, and we can have or use curing salts. With curing salts, they're tinted pink because the USDA wants to make sure that curing salts are not too high in concentration because they have the addition of nitrates or nitrites added to it. Nitrites are going to help do a number of things. One, it's going to help to preserve the product, but also it's going to help color, it's going to increase the texture, and of course flavor. Now, originally we preserved products to make sure that they lasted for a long period of time. In today's world, we cure products for flavor. If we didn't cure bacon, it would just be pork belly. So curing bacon really intensifies the flavor. We take that, we add that to a smoky environment. Now we have the end result. So we'll talk about a wet cure for doing a pork loin, bone-in, known as Kessler Rippenspear, which comes from Germany. We'll also do and talk about a dry cure that we would use for a pork belly to make bacon. Some other examples, you may make a brine to do pickles. You may do a brine or a dry rub for smoking fish. You may also do a cure such as Gravelox that's a combination of sugar and salts. Okay? So the first thing we're going to talk about and the first thing we're going to do is make our dry rub for our pork belly. For this cure, we have salt, just regular kosher salt. To help with coloring, we have sugar. Tinted curing mix, also known as curing salt. This particular bacon is cracked black pepper bacon, and that's as simple as it is. We combine all of these ingredients together. And we're going to rub it onto our fresh pork belly. Now, the curing process is going to take a little bit of time. Over the course of time, the salts are able to penetrate into the product. So we will weigh this, press it, turn it, and allow this to go for about 10 to 20 days. Monitoring it as we go. After 20 days, the product will be removed from the salt. The salt will be rinsed. And then we allow it to dry. Drying develops a pellicle. Pellicle is needed for this next process, smoking. Because the pellicle is important, it does not allow too much smoke to penetrate into the product. It also improves the end result, the sheen. It's much more attractive at the end, and it eats better because of that natural skin that develops on the outside. This product went for 10 days. It dried for 4, and then it'll go into the smoker for about 8 hours at 140 degrees, which ends up being a nice slab of marbled bacon. So you can slice it and it's ready to go. For wet cures, it's exactly the way it sounds. You start off with water, you dissolve your sugars, your salts, and any flavorings that you're going to add to it. For the Kessler, we're going to go all natural, which means we're not going to use any nitrates, any additional nitrates as curing salts. So we're going to use sea salt, we're going to use sugar again, and then we're going to use a sachet which contains ginger, juniper, fresh thyme, fresh sage, and fresh bay leaf, dissolved all in liquid. Now, because the dissolving liquid has to reach about 120 degrees, to at least 120 degrees to dissolve the salt and the sugar, we have to make it the day before, or we have to rush it. Now, Kessler is a bone-in pork loin. Choose a pork loin that has a nice fat covering, but is also very, very fresh. When you cure any product, it is very, very important to follow sanitation standards. Sanitation standards will make sure that nobody gets sick at the end result. The cure itself has to be below 40 degrees, preferably around 32 to 40 degrees. All we have to do now is submerge the pork loin in the brine. This process, depending on how much you're curing, can go 8 days or it can go 20 days. If it's a larger piece, then it has to do a little bit more time in order for that cure to penetrate. Also, if it's a large muscle, we'll need to inject some of the cure into the muscle meat itself to make sure that the cure is all the way through the muscle. So at the end of this process, we again remove it from the brine, we rinse it in fresh water, we dry it to develop pellicle, and then we send it through the smoking process again. Now, because these are a little bit fatter or a little bit thicker, they go for a longer time. I typically smoke my Kessler and my hams 12 to 18 hours in about 140 to 145 degree smoke. Now, the question may come up, smoking. That's another process and another avenue to cure, but because it's going to be introduced to that temperature danger zone for a long period of time, we need to make sure that it goes through the curing process first. So, at the end, what we end up with is a nice, smoky, bone-in pork loin. Everybody loves bacon. Everybody loves that smoky flavor. And that's as simple as it is. Time, a little bit of knowledge on why we do it, and patience. And you end up with a great cure. Hope it turns out great.